Hey everybody, it's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I'm your host Craig Lindell, and we are back to talk about sports because everybody wants to talk about sports. We took a little bit of time off. It seemed very important to give plenty of space and room to people who had important things to say, who were authorities on some of the topics of the day as it relates to Black Lives Matter and the protests and the different things that were going on. We don't really feel like authorities on the topic. And so if you followed any of us on Twitter, we kind of probably spent more time amplifying the messages of other people rather than filling up space with our own stuff. But we do have some sports to talk about, so let's do that. It seems like we're on the precipice of a baseball season, although first of all, I was staying out of the owners versus players and that whole thing just because it felt like one of those fights that DirecTV or a carrier has with a network, and they duke it out in public, and their press releases and leaks to reporters use the public as a pawn in that fight. And I didn't want to be used as a pawn either by the players or by the owners in baseball, when I just kind of assumed that they were always going to get a deal done. And then sometime in the last week, it occurred to me that maybe this wasn't just negotiation theater. Maybe these two sides truly had such a level of distrust between them that they weren't going to get a deal done. And so now it seems like maybe they will get a deal done. Maybe it was negotiation theater. But something else has occurred to me as college football programs have welcomed players back and they're doing testing and players are testing positive for COVID-19. Just because the players and owners have come to a decision to play some baseball doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do it. It doesn't mean that once they start, they're going to be able to finish. And I don't know that they're not going to be able to finish. I'm not sure how they're going to handle if a small outbreak or a medium-sized outbreak or any kind of outbreak occurs within a team. Obviously, that team and those players are not going to be able to play on the same field as players who have not tested positive, but is there a point at which it spreads to the degree that they can't play games? I just don't know. And if the infections of COVID-19 are so pervasive that none of the teams are playing at full strength, I guess that's kind of an evening out factor. I'm not convinced that this thing is actually going to happen, even if they agree on the finer points of a business deal. We'll have to wait and see. I'm obviously hoping for the best. I think that baseball is as I've said on previous podcasts, I think baseball is a game that can be played as safely as any, because it doesn't require you to share sweat with an opponent. You're not backing them in the post like a giant human being, a center in the NBA would be doing. You're not rubbing off screens and things of that nature. So baseball should be one of those safe sports that you can actually have. The clubhouse, the hotels, all the different other factors, I'm not sure that it's a guaranteed lock that baseball is going to go off without a hitch, or any sports are going to go off without a hitch. Obviously I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see sports too. I just don't know. I don't know. My confidence level is not high. And I'm curious if anybody else's confidence level is high. They're plowing ahead. They're moving forward. They're doing whatever they can to try and make things happen. But I'm not sure that their best intentions are good enough to make it happen. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is just kind of an observation, as since we've been going through COVID-19 and so many people were working from home. I've noticed that my weeks, like everybody else, my weeks are running together. Time is is both standing still and flying by simultaneously. I can't believe we're in the middle of June. I can't believe we're halfway through the year. I barely, but at the same time, it seems like it's been a year since my kids finished homeschooling. It seems like a year since we started work from home and not shelter in place, but semi-lockdown. So time has been one of the wackiest things to observe, in my own life over the last 3-4 months. And I'm sure it's been the same for the rest of you. And there are all these jokes about how the weeks just run together and every day seems like the next. And I think that's partially true. I've decided that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday should just be combined into this conglomeration of midweek whatever. Like Monday still kind of feels like a Monday, a Friday still feels like a Friday, Saturday and Sunday still are intact. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that they just blend together. I never know what day of the week it is until it's Monday or Friday, and obviously in between. So one of the other things that we've been talking about behind the scenes, waiting for next year, is about the upcoming football season and the Cleveland Browns. And I've talked to you on this podcast about Baker Mayfield and how we got too high on Baker, and then we've probably gotten too low on Baker after his Freddie Kitchens season. And there's been this kind of idea that maybe the Browns, and I've heard it on sports talk radio, that maybe the Browns have too much talent and that's going to be a complicating factor for the team. And it seems like that might be kind of a joke. Like there's only one ball is like one of those cliches that gets spouted all the time. And I'm not so sure that that's really the case. I was listening to Zach Jackson talking to Ken Carman and Anthony Lima, and he made a good point that you can talk about the Browns having too much talent, quote unquote, and how much talent that they had last year. But keep in mind, Kareem Hunt missed the first part of the season. They basically had no tight ends all year long. And they had injury problems with both Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. didn't practice with the team in OTAs or much at all in training camp. And so other than Nick Chubb, the idea that the Browns had too much talent last year is just false. And so now that they've signed a couple tight ends and they've drafted some people and they have another season for guys like Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry to recover. I believe both those guys had off-season surgeries. I know Jarvis Landry did. Maybe Odell Beckham did not. But so the idea that they have too much talent on offense, I think that's ludicrous. If they're running a rhythm style offense where they're running the ball a fair amount and throwing the ball around, playing time of possession, not necessarily going over the top for home run balls all the time, there should be lots of offensive snaps. Like, I consider the offense that Kevin Stefanski runs to be one that, if it's running well, if the Browns are executing properly, it should lead to quite a few offensive snaps. There, obviously, a home run style, vertical style offense over the course of a season would probably lead to fewer offensive snaps because you're taking deeper shots and yeah, you might be connecting on some home run plays, but you're also probably punting a little bit more frequently. Like, even an unsuccessful drive in a Kevin Stefanski offense, at least this is my perception, I haven't backed it up by looking at what happened last year, my perception is that you're going to get more plays. And more plays is more opportunities, whether it's Odell Beckham Jr., whether it's Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry, or anybody in between. So, if you were going to have too much talent and you were going to have an issue of spreading the ball around, I think the Kevin Stefanski zone blocking scheme offense, I think the offense that style actually plays to the benefit of the Browns and the number of weapons and the number of people who need to get touches and need to get the ball in their hands. So I'm actually not really worried about that. And I think that's just something that, look, I'm not being critical. My brethren in sports talk radio need conversation. They need things to talk about. But I think that's a fake issue. I don't think it's a real issue. It's only an issue when you've got selfish teammates running an offense that's not working very well. And for all the problems that the Browns had on offense as a team last year, that team stayed pretty well together. I know there was some drama, but how could you not have some when the team underperformed to the degree that they did? And they presumably had as many problems with leadership as they had. Ultimately, when you consider the headwinds that team had last year, some self-imposed and some due to outside forces, I think they actually held together pretty well as a team. And maybe that's revisionist history. Maybe I've got enough distance that I'm misremembering. But that's the way it feels right now in June 2020, as we're heading into presumably some kind of an NFL season. So yeah, that's about all I have. That's the sports. I've been watching a lot of UFC. It's kind of the only game in town. I know a lot of you are not giant UFC fans, but we are going to get the trilogy match, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. All indications are, including something that Stipe said on Twitter, that he's going to retire after this fight. So this is going to be a send-off match probably for both him and Daniel Cormier. I think that's great. Hopefully Stipe gets to walk off on his own terms as the GOAT, as the champ. I think he's going to walk away as the greatest of all time, whether he wins or not. But hopefully he keeps that narrative simple and just wins. So that's happening in August. We are going to start working on some guests. We've got some exciting announcements for the podcast. I know it might seem strange with the lack of frequency that we've been podcasting lately, but we have been making plans, making moves, and we've got some announcements coming up that I'm really excited about. And there's going to be some rejuvenation in me as a podcast host. I'm really excited about what's going to be happening over the next couple months. I'm excited to share it with you. That is an ultimate tease. So thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.